Right now, pop culture and media is filled with sarcastic meta humor, fourth wall breaking, and irony. It's the flavor of the last decade or so. But what happens when a D&D player tries to imitate it in-game, only for it to suck? But first, a message from today's sponsor, Displate. You know, in all our days reading stories on the beach, we never really decorated much, did we? Hey, Shell, let's get some decorations. Impressive, very nice. Let's see Shell's home decoration. Oh, look at that subtle gloss finish, the tasteful metallic design. Oh god, it even has magnetic mounting. Actually, I'll be right back. Yeah, can this video be sponsored by Displate? Nice. What does the audience need to know? There are how many pop culture collections? Postering everything from movies, video games, and anime? They're magnet mounted and don't need any tools to set up? Just use code CritCrab at checkout? Easy. Alright, I have a story to tell now. Roll post. I wrote a D&D campaign. It wasn't the most original, but neither was that guy's character. At the dawn of Session 0, we discussed everything that's expected of a D&D game. I explained the premise and the players unveiled their characters. They all seemed perfectly normal. All except Rick Poole. If you read into that name, you know exactly what his character's about. At the beginning, his character was introduced as fairly normal. He introduced his character as an intelligence-based artificer. His backstory was simply that he's a tortured intellectual, too smart for his own good. One of his gadgets killed his parents, and he was adopted by an evil criminal organization who used his young brain to build weapons. He eventually built himself a way out and uses his skills to survive a life of crime. This seemed perfectly fine when I approved it, but he played quite differently in-game. When the campaign began, their characters spent the first session learning their mission that would span the entire campaign. Assemble the 5 crystals to stop the Tarrasque from destroying the world. Not my best work, but for a simple D&D campaign, I thought this was fine. Quickly, I would like to point out that it's more than okay to have simple D&D campaigns. This plot works, especially for the most casual D&D players. They don't need a Song of Ice and Fire or some deeply complex multi-layered art piece. Most players would just be happy following a plotline at all. Of course, OP is just defensive of his writing because of what Rick Poole is about to do. The first session went okay. The only complaint I had with Rick Poole was that he seemed a bit inattentive the entire time, but especially whenever I wasn't directly involving him. I hesitate to even call this a complaint because I came to wish that he stayed that way. At the end of the session, I messaged him hey, don't be afraid to speak up and involve yourself. You're a member of the group. This request was the catalyst that would ruin the game. While the debut was spent individually gathering the characters one by one, the second session is the part where they all met. In a tavern. They introduced themselves to each other, plotted out the mission, and then Rick Poole opened his mouth. So, we all meet in a tavern, huh? Ugh, how original. I suppose we're all going to go on a long adventure against insurmountable odds, learning about each other and ourselves, but prevail nonetheless. The cliche works for us. Good sign. This got like a low chuckle from the table and myself. I was glad to see him come out of his shell. Our paladin was the first to speak. Yes, I suppose so. Alright, let's talk route. Heh, broke your little mind. I'll try not to do that again in the future. I should say that nobody seemed to have a problem with Rick Poole yet. As time went on, the frequency of meta humor and sarcasm increased. The first time was a little funny, the second time less so, and it became less and less humorous as time passed. The party ventured into the woods to begin their journey. Some were discussing their goals. Rick Poole was drinking. This is totally acceptable, but it seems like he doesn't understand how alcohol works. I'm a recovering alcoholic of 12 years, but I'm not offended. It was just cringe-inducing to me having to watch someone act like being drunk made them better in combat or have a sharper wit. It's perfectly normal for characters to come off awkward if their player just started them. In the early sessions of a new campaign, it still happens to me sometimes, and I've been playing D&D for a very long time at this point. This could just be a goofy misstep into character, but no, it isn't. This is a warning shot for what's about to come. Eventually, we approached the dungeon that contained the first crystal, the first of 5 that would seal Tarask's fate. The wizard cast light, the paladin stood up front, the rogue slinked off into the corner, and Rick Poole criticized the set design. He had a problem with the way the dungeon was arranged, saying that the layout of the dungeon made no sense. Dungeons are supposed to be real abandoned places. This room just looks like it was made to be scary and dungeon-y. That's the point of what he said anyways. In execution, he said it a bit more like, "This dungeon sucks, am I right? Something, meta humor, burp." But still, the criticism was actually fair. I just snatched a dungeon map from the internet without really thinking about it. We encounter the boss of the dungeon after a few more fourth wall breaks involving traps and tropes. Then, a hobgoblin approaches, leading a small pack of minions. They descended on the party. "Ugh, of course. What's a dungeon without a boss fight? Who's willing to bet that killing this creature advances our quest, giving us treasure too?" The fight continues and the crystal gives them a vision of the Tarask. "Hey buddy, nobody knows this, but we're going to slowly work our way up to killing you over the course of 3-hour weekly sessions. Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it either." It was so played out by now that the laughter stopped. Nobody acknowledged his humor anymore. It only took a few short sessions for this to get entirely played out, but he didn't seem to care. No, because why is it so wrong for a boss fight to advance the plot? A big point of meta humor is to point out inconsistencies and problems, but a powerful creature that possesses an item you need doesn't really call for this brand of sarcasm. I can understand why the players aren't really responsive. They're at best confused with this behavior because it's so tonally different from what they were used to. How do you even interact with this guy? It's as if he believes that everyone else thinks that what he's saying is funny or insightful, when nobody seems to care. It could be executed well. This was annoying. I didn't care for it at all, but I thought that after he realized nobody finds him funny or smart, he would realize how awkward he's being and quiet down. This didn't happen. Our rogue received a letter, but to understand it, you need to know Rogue's backstory, which Rick Poole and everyone else was about to learn. Rogue told the group that he is the last surviving member of his clan. After they were cursed by a hag, they all died in strange, coincidental ways. But for some reason, Rogue is still alive. He doesn't know why. As Rogue was explaining his backstory, you could feel Rick Poole's anticipation well up, waiting for his turn to speak. He adjusted and sat upright. What does the letter say? One other member of the clan is still alive, and he might have answers for how to stop the curse? I closed my eyes and actually hung my head, waiting for Rick Poole to tear into Rogue for his cliché backstory. I winced as I heard Rick Poole chuckle under his breath. "So, there are 2 orphans in our party. Is anyone else here an orphan?" Nobody responded. "Well, while we're doing backstories, I was always an outcast. My parents left me because the world hates smart people. If you're really intelligent, everybody leaves you. They would rather live in their idiotic bubble where their ideas are never challenged. So, Rogue, you got any more sad stories, or are we all caught up?" This one actually got a nervous laugh out of me, but before Rogue could reply, Paladin muttered, "Maybe there's another reason everybody leaves you." Rickpool responded with an agitated, "What?" But Paladin dropped it and we continued our journey for the second crystal. The sessions continued, but his behavior just didn't stop. No matter what the situation was, there was always a few wisecracks or fourth wall breaks or quippy one-liners per session. I was personally offended whenever he would poke holes in my campaign, but I could take it. On the other hand, Rickpool developed a nasty habit of tearing into other players' characters. Like when Rogue was kind and donated to an orphan, he was the first to be all, "Whoa, the dagger with a heart of gold? Who could have seen this coming?" Despite the Paladin's willingness to speak up on occasion, Rickpool targeted Rogue the most. He would also poke at the Paladin for being a goody two-shoes stereotype. I am just geeked that Rickpool criticizes Rogue for having a tragic backstory immediately after sharing his own. This player is marked by a total lack of self-awareness. We're also beginning to see Rickpool's behavior come around on him. This party seems shy to conflict, which makes perfect sense. They came here to have fun. But still, I think that if Rickpool knew how annoying he was, and ironically how unintelligent he seemed by acting like this, he would crawl back into his basement and never return. The players fought another boss, got their second crystal. By now they've been playing for a couple months. I had realized how to better tolerate Rickpool, which is just tune him out and keep his interactions with NPCs and important characters to a minimum. I kept going like this for 3 straight sessions. I wish I could tell you how he felt about it, but I haven't been paying enough attention to him to say. He would keep doing this annoying routine, and we would keep on dragging the story forward. I did notice that Rickpool stopped trying to run away from the party and harass uninvolved NPCs. Rickpool was stuck to the party like glue at this point, as he realized that I don't tolerate off-topic antics coming from him anymore. Where he used to leave the party to fight for spotlight on himself, he now invades the other player's personal space and involves himself with them. Now, whenever he ran away, I just told him to run anything he does by me. You want to go to the tavern? Nice, just tell me when you rejoin the party. You're doing science experiments? Cool, see ya. Then, on the 4th session of my new resolution, it became impossible to hide. The party had to present their 2 crystals to a wise seer, who would tell them where the 3rd is. As the party sat before the seer, anticipation filled the air. The room was dimly lit, the scent of incense swirled around them. The seer began to speak, her voice ethereal and mysterious. "The crystals hold the key to our world's fate. They must be..." Rickpool interrupted with a sarcastic chuckle. "Crystals, huh? Are we sure this isn't just a fancy gem collection scheme?" I didn't stop. Halfway through his quip, I interrupted him. He interrupted me back, but at this point I was just so done. "So, do these crystals tell fortunes, or is that just your gift? The crystals must be united to unleash the ultimate power and save the world, or whatever." I just stopped. This information was very important, so I settled for letting him have his fun, so I can relay the important information to the real players. We all patiently waited, looking at Rickpool. Rickpool then shrugged. "Hey, I'm just saying, if we're trusting our fate to some shiny rocks, we might need a backup plan." It felt so tense. I hadn't really interrupted him before now. This is the most confrontational I've ever been towards him, but I was willing to ignore it if it got the other players back in the game. Of course, that was not possible. I made it this far and had momentum, so I pressed him again. "No, I'm giving important quest information. Now is not the time." "This is my character. He's a jerk, but he gets the job done." He's not getting any job done. He's being obstructive and annoying. The word annoying in particular set him off. He said, "Maybe if you let me play my character, I wouldn't have to do it here." Just whatever, man. I dropped it. I told everybody that I'll message them what the seer said so they can know what's going on later. And I did. I texted them the seer's message. It has been 3 days and I don't know what to do. The next game should be Friday, but I'm not sure if there even is a next session, given the last one ended on such a bad note. Yeah, I don't know, man. This story sounds like it's still in development, but the email is a month old. Of course, my boring advice would be to play it by ear, talk to Rick Poole out of game, and see what happens. But if you're seeing this, feel free to send a follow-up email, Reddit post, or leave a comment. And as usual, till next time.